Hey everyone, quick little announcement here from Fishing the DMV. Our club membership on Patreon is nearly full. There are only I'll repeat, four membership spots still available. Once these spots are gone, they're gone, and I'll be closing down the club membership to new members until 2026. At that point, you can try to sign up, but it'll be at a higher rate. All Patreon members will receive 5% off their orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off their orders to Tiger Crankbaits, 10% off their orders to Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll also gain access to our private Facebook group community. You'll also be allowed to enter our 5 club membership tournaments only with guarantee payouts, members only content, ad-free, commercial-free episodes of the podcast, Patreon supporter giveaways, and so much more. And you get all of this for $6 a month, which is less than a pack of Senkos or a jackhammer chatterbait. And since we're under our 10 membership spot, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to give everyone a 10% off their membership if they sign up for the year. So that brings it down to under $65 a year, locked in indefinitely as long as you want to be a member. Hurry up because there's only so many spots left before I shut down the club to any new members until 2026.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much? Because I am never disappointed out here, because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
Hell yeah! Angler's Choice, baby! John Moore's! White River, Ranger, Triton, Nitro, let's go, baby! Woo!
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Monday Night Live. Another weekend's in the books. I really wish I was doing a little bit more fishing this past weekend. I did a little bit of pre-fishing for our upcoming tournament next weekend, but also I was just watching them just do some home run steroid numbers on Lake Fork. Dear God, that was insane. I didn't know you had the ability. And I think it's such a Cosmos joke that you go to the Sabine afterwards. It's just hilarious that we're going to go from catching, 140 pounds a day to we're going to go back to like the Three Rivers in Pittsburgh, where if you catch 6, you might cash a check. It's a huge whiplash, but it's really fun to see really what Lake Fork can put out. And we have a guy on here that kind of cracked the code with the Potomac. As you guys know, when May comes to our area of the woods, that means there's about 500 tournaments on the Potomac River, and the first BFL just went down. And so we have the guy that won the first BFL to kick off the Potomac River season, I guess, with 18 pounds plus, just enough to beat out Ryan. I was about to message Ryan to be like, dude, are you about to repeat here? Josh, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Dude, we're definitely going to get into the tournament, but just a little bit about you. Like, what got you into fishing and got you on this life journey?
It is that. It's a life's journey. I don't know, man. I've always been drawn to water. I've literally, since a young kid, I remember just being drawn to water and fish. And I've had, my dad was a tackle shop owner, but he was primarily walleye, Lake Erie kind of stuff. And my grandfather was a trout fisherman, and I just took to that like crazy. And then I would pond fish for bass and go to little local lakes. Bass fishing in my area, as you mentioned, Pittsburgh. I live about 45 minutes southeast of Pittsburgh, and by the way, it's fishing a lot better than 5 fish for less than 5 pounds, or I forget exactly what you said. You need to come up. I'll take you out sometime. Anyhow, in 05, when the Classic came, of course, I had to go check that out. And right after that, man, I joined the club and I was in. I was hooked. This is crack. If you're a tournament fisherman, you know this is a drug. I bought my first boat in '06. It was a 10 rig. Fished locally for years till I think in 2018. No, excuse me, 2019. I signed up for a few BFLs as a co-angler up in New York, and I did 2 of those and decided it was time. I went out and bought a glass boat, which I'm not convinced I like yet, but it is what it is right now. Anyhow, and I really got my butt kicked, to be honest with you, since 2020 in the BFLs and invitationals and stuff. It's been a process. So that brings me here to where I am now, to get a win on a Potomac, on a body of water that we don't see eye to eye. For this is my first real good tournament there. So I was kind of shocked to get a win here, to be honest with you.
What would you consider your proving grounds, the body of water that you spend the most time on honing your skills from childhood till now?
Yeah, the Three Rivers.
Would be Three Rivers? Okay.
Yeah, Three Rivers. We got a couple of highland reservoirs that are mainly smallmouth.
Raystown.
We also have our good largemouth lakes are really, they have horsepower restrictions, 20 horsepower or less. So it's really difficult to have 2 boats sometimes, especially in my previous years. I just recently bought a little 10 boat that I'm going to take on these horsepower restriction lakes, because we have some really good largemouth fishing, but it's just difficult to get on because of the horsepower restrictions. So my proving grounds were basically the Three Rivers. I spent a lot of time on Lake Erie too.
Okay.
So that's where I'm mainly a smallmouth guy. You know, I make them tick. I know how they tick. I know how they think, and I'm just better at smallmouth, in my opinion.
It gets in your DNA. It's really hard to go from a Great Lakes smallmouth angler to different parts. It's such a unique style of fishing that it's hard to replicate that other places for you to get practice. And I think that's why when the pros first started going up north, it was always, the top 5% anglers were northern anglers. I mean, it still is to this day, but I feel like now there's more southern guys that are good, but it's just, how do you replicate fishing on an ocean? It's impossible.
Yeah. And especially Erie, it's almost featureless. You're looking, it's kind of like the Potomac in a way, because it's very flat, and you're looking for the less than a foot variation in terrain difference, and topographical differences, and bottom, if it's shell or sand or whatever it might be. It's been a difficult transition for me to get outside of my area. It's been taking me a long time to not only learn the bodies of water, but actually learn how to fish a tournament on big bodies of water, because most of our lakes outside of Erie are rather small. So some of my first experiences on Cayuga and the St. Lawrence and Champlain, like, you go to these massive bodies of water, and now I got a 250 horsepower motor, and the Potomac, all these places. It's hard you need to sit down and actually analyze what's in front of you. And I've had a difficult time doing that. I'm not catching them here, so I'll run 20 miles that way and catch them down there. And, I just need to settle down in an area and learn that area and figure out what the fish are doing.
Is that the biggest thing, that if you could go back in time and tell your younger self to do, that's what it would be, just to hunker down in an area?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That, and it's just, it's amazing how much of a mental game this is. I know the mental side of fishing is not a popular topic, but it is a big mind game.
Mm-hmm.
So
It really is, because again, going from a 20 boat club tournament on a 50-acre lake to a multi-day event on 100,000 acres, 200,000 acres event, it's a completely different mindset. And some things are different, some things are not. But then you also have the other thing where you just hype yourself out of it. You really get in your own head that I don't belong here. When
that's where I was at the end of last year. I signed up for the invitationals, which was I wasn't ready for. And then I compounded that with a bunch of mechanical issues. I literally, I don't even want to start complaining on here, but I had so many mechanical issues. And the result that I ended up with last year was not me. I know I am better than the result. And I don't want to blame any of my equipment or anything that happened. In a way, I'm still proud of myself. In a lot of those tournaments, I still figured out how to catch at least a limit, which is difficult under certain circumstances. And I came home last year after the Toyota Series Championship, and I put my boat in the garage, and I did not touch it, look at it, nothing. I was so sick and disgusted. My trim broke down there, and it kept me. It forced me to stay really close to the ramp, and I was on Wheeler, and to get to the fish their way, it's a good trip. So I was kind of disgusted. Finally got it out to the shop in March, and I got it back literally 2 weeks ago, I think. The end of April. I don't know exactly what day. I took it out for the first time the week before the Potomac tournament, and I wasn't even going to sign up for the Potomac tournament. But I have a very good friend of mine that called, and we were talking, and he said, "Why don't you sign up? I'll go as a co. We'll link up and go." I'm like, "Okay." And so I took my boat out the next day, made sure everything was good. We're good. And I wasn't even going to practice for the Potomac, and then I ended up getting a day off, and I practiced that Friday. And so to go from not even fishing it to winning it is amazing.
And for everyone listening, we're going to build up the foreplay here a little bit more before we get in the tournament, because it's fascinating about the invitationals and just kind of how every story in a person's life is a story, and you have these little seeds that are sown years ago that basically bear fruit now. What was that first invitational like when you pay the entry fee and you go to it? Was it more, were you just awestruck? Like, what was the feeling?
Yeah, my first one was on Rayburn, and it was,
wow.
It was overwhelming, to say the least. And I don't know, the excitement. And then we had a fog delay the first day, which took my anxiety to another level. And I ended up having a horrible tournament. I made, like, the emotion just got to me. And like I said, I probably wasn't ready to fish outside of the region like that. And to fish tournaments that size. Those guys are good. A lot of those guys are good. And I'm good too. But I just wasn't ready for that.
Especially going from the style of fishing. I mean, I would assume going from Gin Clear, Lake Erie, smallmouth to Texas, that's very much like on the opposite end of the spectrum from what you're used to. Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And how many invitationals did you fish last year?
I fished them all. I was all in.
Wow.
I was all in. And I had Rayburn. I didn't have any mechanical issues. I just made poor decisions. The next one was at West Point on the Georgia-Alabama line. And the first morning, my first two fish was a 6 and a 3. So I had 9 pounds and 2 fish, which is really good for that lake. And then I lost all power, my electronics, everything. I don't know what happened. We had a weird storm come in. I don't know if moisture, I don't know. Took it to shop. They got it fixed. But that kind of ruined that tournament for me. And I keep going on down the line and telling stories like that. 2 lower units, 3 props, 1 live scope transducer at St. Clair, which is arguably the most important tournament to have live scope. Trolling motor went out at Champlain. So I, on top of the entry fees and the expense of the travel, I've had a very expensive year last year. So I was a little disgusted with the outcome.
After getting through so much adversity last year. What was your off season like, mentally preparing for this year and what you wanted to do?
Honestly, I'm typically really eaten up with the sport. I'm looking at all kinds of events, learning new techniques, always on YouTube, trying to just progress. I think that's a big thing, is always be progressing. This year I didn't do that. I just didn't. I didn't have a desire. Even when I felt like the season was coming up here in Pennsylvania, anyhow, like end of March is about the time. At that point, I still wasn't feeling it. Like I said, I wasn't even going to fish this BFL.
That's crazy, man.
I know. And I like I said, I got a very good friend that lives in Virginia. He called me, and we met at the Bassmaster Open a couple years ago. We actually, I was a co-angler in that tournament, actually. He was a pro, and we got paired up, and we've been friends ever since. But he called me. He says, sign up. He loves the Potomac. So he talked me into it, and I'm glad he did. And the rest is history, I guess.
You have this experience on fishing big tournaments, big bodies of water now, at least, a couple of years, and you go into the Potomac and you say you just have one day of practice. Do you have years of experience on the river, or was it kind of new? And if that's the case, like, how did you start to try to break it down with just a day?
So I'm not a grass fisherman. So that adds to that issue there. The grass to me this year wasn't playing. So when I got there, I went to areas that I knew held fish, and they always traditionally hold fish. I mean, you hear about them, Belmont Bays, and the Mattawamans, and I just couldn't get the grass bite going this year. So that's what I started doing, and something told me to start fishing hard cover, which is what I traditionally do down there. But when the grass is on, the hard cover doesn't play. That grass is like a magnet for the fish usually. And there's a lot of locals that are really, really good with that when it comes to that grass bite. They're good with the hard cover bite too, but I don't know. I just started fishing hard cover, and then I got a couple bites, a couple clues, and I started adding to it. And then my buddy Matt that I mentioned to talk me into the tournament, he met me around lunchtime, and he got in the boat with me to practice, and we just stayed in Mattawoman and fished around, and we figured out the bite. So now, once we figured out the bite, I just spread it out in my other areas that I didn't even practice. Several of the areas I didn't practice at all, just because I know they traditionally hold fish. Like my starting spot, I just went there. The morning of the tournament, that was my first area. I didn't even practice it. Quantico, didn't practice it. I didn't. I just went, and I really just instinctually went fishing.
This show, we talk about the mindset and strategy a lot. When I had Ryan on, we talked about for the Bass Nation event where, he was going to make a 3-hour run all the way down to the Chick. And we talked about how the tide swing was going to affect that every day. Was the tide at all a factor in how you strategize about, are you going to go far and work back? Are you going to go up and work down? Or are you just ignoring the tide completely?
No, I've tried ignoring the tide on the Potomac and the James before, but you have to pay attention to that tide. And so kind of my game plan was in the morning, we were going to start basically at high tide. So I wanted to put myself around the most fish at that point. And then once the tide started getting good, right for it was basically an outgoing tide most of the morning until about lunchtime. It was supposed to be anyhow. So I wanted to start on a starting spot that's a community hole that I knew there's fish there, a lot of fish. And then I was going to work south and back with the tide. And generally you can't do that. At least I don't feel like you could do that on Potomac if you're grass fishing. because the Potomac's generally an area. It's not like a run the tide. You can run the tide sort of, but it's not like the James where you could run the tide from the mouth of Chickahominy the whole way up to Osborne. It's
not a milk run place, especially because of the grass flats being so massive.
Exactly. It's more of an area. Like you need to pick maybe 2 areas. But this one, I got the milk run a little bit more, and being from the Three Rivers area, we do that a lot. So I'm very comfortable doing that.
Okay.
And that's what I did, basically. I mean, I didn't run around as much because of the wind, but I still hit 4 areas, and within those areas, I hit a bunch of isolated targets. But
so you get to your first spot in the morning. Do you have it to yourself, or is it just basically I-95 traffic? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Potomac special.
That's another thing that I've had to get used to on the Potomac is fishing in crowds.
Yeah.
It raises anxiety levels, and there's always one douchebag in the crowd that is doing something. And it happened a couple times on Saturday to me, and I vented my frustration once to a fellow. But yeah, there's no such thing as a secret spot, really.
In your first spot, how many keepers were you able to get? And did it cross your mind about camping and playing defense all day at all?
No. That part. First of all, I had a limit. We launched at 6. I had a limit by 7.
Damn.
Yeah. I pulled in the spot, and everybody was throwing reaction, chunking and winding baits. And we had that cold front hit. And I just did not feel like the reaction bait was going to be that strong in the morning. Now, guys were picking off fish here and there, but I just felt like what I learned about the Potomac too is, man, that drop shot with a little worm and dead sticking it can be deadly. And so that's what I went. I just went spinning rod. I didn't even throw a spinning rod in practice. I just felt like that was going to be the way to go, and it worked out. I ended up catching two of my wave fish in the first 2 hours, basically.
It's interesting because I think the high end guys think this way, where you go to tidal fisheries and stuff, and finesse plays really well because it's against the narrative. You think chatterbait, power fishing stuff, flipping, but you throw a shaky head, a drop shot, anything finessey, you usually get rewarded. But psychologically, I think a lot of anglers think like, well, no, I'm sacrificing a win by doing this. Were you mentally going into this tournament just thinking about just a good finish, hit a couple of singles, have a good finish, or were you trying to like swing for the fence? No, I'm in it to win it type of deal.
I wasn't swinging for the fence. Absolutely not. I'm very comfortable with a spinning rod, and I knew from practice what I found in practice. I wasn't on I didn't feel like I was on the winning fish, but I felt like I could get to that 16-pound mark pretty easily if I chipped away at it all day. And that's kind of what happened. I just got fortunate. I got a couple bigger bites too. But I'm very comfortable with a spinning rod. I never feel like I'm giving up the win. I fished the James and Potomac enough to know that, a Senko or a wacky rig and all the other finesse baits are. A Ned rig's really good on the river.
Stupid tube, all that stuff.
Yeah, man, it's insane how well it works. And you when you think of these places, you think shallow power fishing, but the spinning rod works, man.
When you get a limit that early, I think that everyone dreams of that as their Disney princess scenario of within 30 minutes to 60 minutes of launch, I have a limit and it's gravy. It happens. And I always find this fascinating because I feel like your wheels turn in your head completely different when you catch a limit early versus when it takes you 8 hours to catch 5. Did you try to deviate from your game plan at all once you had 5 in the box? Did the wheels start or the voices start talking?
I did deviate from my plan a little bit later in the day. But that was more based on conditions. And at that point, it was still early. I had a limit, but I only had about 12 or 13 pounds in the box. I wasn't weighing them at that point. So I knew I had to keep chipping away at it. So I stuck to my plan. I hit a few more grass patches. I actually caught one on a chatterbait then that helped call up a heavy, I think it was a 3.5 or so. So I got rid of one of my small ones. I'm sitting at about 14, and then the tide started getting right, so I decided to run a south to a spot on the main river, and I started hitting my pitching X Zone adrenaline bug around, and I got bites in there in practice, and I noticed they weren't hitting it on the fall. I popped it once, and I wasn't pegging my weight, so the bait is such shallow water too. The bait would come just below the surface, and the weight would separate from the bait, and the bait would go one direction, the weight would go other, and they would unload on it at that point. They would come up and make the water boil. At that point, it was telling me it was more of a reaction thing with that, but I couldn't get them to go with the chatterbait. So I stuck with the flipping and pitching hard cover. We went into an area, me and my co-angler, and I upgraded 3 more times, but not by huge margins. But I left that area I caught up to about 16 pounds at that point, and it was about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I told my I said, okay, now we need to start looking for the bigger fish. And I ran into Quantico looking for some bigger fish. And I was really shocked at that point that the northwest wind was really pushing the water out. We weren't supposed to have dead low tide until about noon. And I was in there just after 10. And a lot of the stuff I wanted to fish, I couldn't. I just couldn't even, it was just too shallow. So we just started hitting isolated random stuff. I just went fishing and started a process of elimination, basically. And we found a spot with 2 bigs on it, 2 big fish. I caught another 1/4 at lunchtime, and my caught a 415 right behind me off the same spot at that time. So at that point, it's lunchtime, and I got over 18 pounds. I didn't realize it. That's when I started weighing my fish. And I told my I'm like, I actually have a decent bag, but I didn't think, I still thought I needed more.
It's that time of year where they're spawned out, and the weights dropped just a little bit right now. I mean, if the tournament here was 2 or 3 weeks earlier, I think the weights would have been a lot better. Y'all river rats can always just, yell at me in the comment section. But generally speaking, that's what it seems like. There was a couple of tournaments last weekend. There was a ton of fish on beds down at the beach in Aquia. So I don't know why. I get why they put the tournaments now, because if you do it early, and this is the same thing that happened with the elites when they went to Albemarle Sound. Small craft advisory and tidal waters just go hand in hand. And if you have it in the early spring, there's a chance that it's going to get blown out and you can't have it. But it is what it is. Each spot you went to, did you feel like you had it to yourself at all? Or was each spot a traffic jam? Like you said, you went to Quantico. Was it something where you had to get in line?
No, my first spot was. And, but Quantico I was really shocked. There was no boats in there. I think I saw one other boat in there that was actually fishing. There was a few out in front by the bridge, but there was only one other bass boat in the entire Quantico area while I was there. And I was guys were coming in and checking it, and they were seeing how low the tide was, and they were leaving. So I think, go ahead.
What made you stay when everyone else said it's not worth it?
Just I have confidence in that creek.
Okay.
I know where they live there, and I have more confidence there. And at that point, like I said, I was fishing the conditions, which is a lot of what we do on the rivers too. Now that I think about it, our water levels fluctuate a lot based on the locks. And so low water doesn't really scare me. It moves the fish, and you just have to keep looking for them until you find them. And we did. I mean, we only got 2 more big ones in there, but it was enough. So
let's finish out the story before I ask my other question here, because you ended up with 18 pounds 4 ounces. This guy named Ryan had 2 ounces less than you. Who weighed in first?
I weighed in first.
Oh my God!
I forget the gentleman's name that was leading at the time. He had 17:10. I think he finished in third, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. But I knew I had 18, and when I came into the dock, my buddy was about 34. I was about 54, and so he actually was there already. And he goes, "What you got?" And I said, "I don't know. I got about 18." And he goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah. Why?" He goes, "Well, that's going to be a pretty good bag of fish." I go, "No, it won't." Like I didn't believe it. And
You can't. It's I don't know. It's such a weird thing when you're on the pedestal seat, and it's like, what do you want to believe it? And then if it doesn't work out, you've dropped that much more.
Yep. And that's it. That's exactly. I guess it was a defense mechanism. I was fighting it, and I weighed in. I knew Ryan was out there. I knew he's hot right now. I didn't know when I saw him weighing in. I knew it was going to be an issue. I got a glimpse of his bag, but 2 ounces, man. I don't know what to say. When it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I don't know what else to say about that.
A drive home must have been surreal.
Yeah, like I said, there was divine intervention going on that day for me. Everything just went right. I was making the right decisions, and I was thinking clearly. I really felt like I was fishing at home on a body of water that I typically don't do well on. And I'm not. It's not my favorite body of water usually.
Tidal in general, or just the Potomac?
Just the Potomac and the Chesapeake. I like the James. I feel like it's more like there's more hard cover, and that's what I like fishing.
Which is interesting because I don't know if you consider Champlain, Cayuga, Chautauqua, places up there, they have grass. So I mean,
Yeah.
Are you completely, I guess, foreign to grass fisheries up that way completely?
They do have grass, but it's different. It is different. Like Oneida, for example, there's isolated rock piles in that grass. So to me, I'm not fishing the grass. I'm now fishing the rock piles. That's how I break down Oneida, if that makes any sense. Because the fish are going to set up on that transition from the rock to the grass at the rock piles. So I always target those. So where the Potomac is just acres and acres and acres of grass, and it's really hard to identify the difference or why they're there. And you're almost looking for a needle in the haystack, in my opinion.
It's a different type of fishing. It really is. And then, guys, I'm going to open up the comment section now. Best question will win a prize to Jake's Bait and Tackle, $10 gift card. I mean, I talked to so many guys from the Carolinas, the fish that run and gun, burn 200 gallons of fuel, and they get the shakes if you tell them, like, I have to power pull down and sit in Belmont Bay for 8 hours. They'd rather jump off a cliff than do that. It's so different. But I think that's why people that are good in Florida do well in the Potomac and vice versa. It's that you got to fish in a group and you got to camp, generally speaking, of course.
Yeah.
The northern thing is so interesting to me, especially when you're fishing like the Ohio River, places like that, where legendarily challenging, let's say, fishing wise. When you flip and pitch and you're used to bites maybe being a little bit harder to come by, do you have a feeling of how many times you're going to flip to a stump before you move on?
No, no, I don't. I keep moving. That's just my style. I'll pull up on a spot and I'll make 3 casts and I'll move on. That's how it is for me. I don't usually pick stuff apart. Now, a lot of my guys in the club, they're really good at picking stuff apart. And I've learned a lot from them. But I'd rather not do it, unless I have to. And I didn't feel like I had to on the Potomac. They were especially on tournament day, they started eating it pretty well, eating the bait. So
we got a question, guys, on Instagram. I can't share the comment, but we got Drowning Kittens 32 that says, do you have any experience on the Ohio River? If so, what is power fishing like on a body of water like that?
What is power fishing? It's really going to depend on the time of year. And yes, I do have experience on the Ohio River. It's going to fish very similar to our end. The Pittsburgh end of the Ohio River is full of smallmouth. As you get closer to Cincinnati, it's more largemouth. So when I'm talking Ohio River or Three Rivers fishing, I'm primarily talking smallmouth. So power fishing to me for smallmouth usually includes topwater.
Okay.
If the like poppers are really big, buzz baits, stuff like that. A chatterbait and spinnerbait are also good, and a jerkbait. You can't forget about the jerkbait. We'll get weed lines and especially in like around Labor Day, the wolf pack on those weed lines, and jerkbaits and spinnerbaits and chatterbaits are the way to go.
My brother fished the Junior Bassmasters at the Three River Classic, so It was interesting to see the people getting so jazzed for 12-inch and 11-inch fish. How has that place evolved over the years? Like, what are just on average a good bag now considered?
Well, I mean, how it's evolved is we got a lot more grass than what we did, and now it's not. It's milfoil, a lot of it, and eelgrass. But it doesn't set up like the Potomac. It's just literally a straight grass line down the riverbank, down the ledge. That has helped the fishery a lot. And, like last year I fished a club tournament, and our rivers go to 15-inch size limit after October 1st. And it was kind of difficult. And, but I ended up I only caught 2 fish that day, but one was a 410. It was one of those days where it was just, the bite wasn't very good, and everybody in the club struggled. I actually ended up winning that tournament, with nice. 2 fish.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now, with that said, like I said, it's a 15-inch size limit, and the limit is 3 at that time of year. So,
but still, that's pretty challenging conditions.
Yeah. The rivers are still challenging, don't get me wrong, but in November there's some holes up here if things get right, we could catch upper teens, maybe low 20s in our 5 best in late October, November. There's big fish up here.
God, there you guys go. All right, got a couple of questions here on YouTube and Facebook too. Paul Whitney says, not fishing the grass on the Potomac makes my eye twitch. I mean, yeah, dude, I feel you there. I'm a grass guy as well. Got Michael here that says, do you favor the grass or the grass edge if you had to pick?
If I had to, this is how I break down grass fishery. This is how I'm learning to break them down is I'm not necessarily fishing the grass. I'm fishing the topographical changes, which there aren't many on the Potomac, not very noticeable, but I'm learning to do that. And usually when you find a topographical change, it usually includes some kind of change in the grass too. And that does mean edge. So I prefer the edges.
Let's see. We got another one here. Whoops, that's the wrong one. There we go. We got Brandon Solis. It says, what is your drop shot setup like?
Okay, that's actually a good question. I have kind of a unique drop shot setup when it comes to largemouth fishing, round cover. I use the traditional spinning rod, 7-foot medium action, 2,500 or 3,000 size reel. I go with Cortland Master Braid, 10-pound or 15, and I tie that to a 10-pound leader, fluorocarbon leader.
10, okay.
Okay. And then my hook is actually an EWG, a size 1 EWG. And I use, basically you could choose the 4 or 6-inch worm of your choice. I really like 4-inch. I feel a lot of guys use the 6-inch trick worms and such, or other finesse worms. I favor the 4-inch generally. And then I go, depending on, like on Saturday, I was using 1/8 ounce because I was literally just letting that bait soak. And by reducing the weight, slowed me down, if that makes sense. Like I have to really think about what I'm doing and methodically move that bait so I keep it on the bottom.
How did you figure that out?
Years of experience. Actually, Lake Oneida taught me that. Lake Oneida is stingy at times, and when you dead stick a bait, a drop shot, that's what it takes to get them to bite. So I applied that. I actually applied that on a Potomac tournament down here 2 years ago. It was a state tournament. I was having a rough day, and I knew the fish were there, and I just started fishing that drop shot and dead sticking it as slow as I could. And you'll let that thing soak for 10 seconds, and then you'll feel the tick, and there it is. And actually, one of my big fish came on the drop shot. It was the 4-1, I think.
Wow.
So they will eat it.
And guys, I see all your questions on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm going to finish them up. I got a question of my own. Why 10-pound test? What made you settle for that versus 12 or 8 or 6?
I just like 10-pound test. I mean, the water clarity down there, I don't really let that affect me. The water clarity affect the size line I use anyhow, but it just added security, especially when you go further south on the Potomac. You'll start getting into more barnacles and stuff of that nature, and it's just a little added security. That's all.
Mm-hmm. FG knot guy, or you got another knot you like to tie?
I tie the Crazy Alberto. If you tie that one right, you're not going to have any issues. Yeah, the FG comes through nice and easy, but try tying that on the boat on a windy day. It's not that easy.
I agree with you there. We got Zach Lip on Instagram that says, what is your bait of choice for a drop shot? And do you use any kind of scent attractants?
No, I don't use scent attractant. Two, I'll give you guys a little something I've discovered on the Potomac too, is this time of year, I don't know if I really have a worm of choice, but I really like floating plastic for largemouth. Especially when you're dead sticking, I think it just hovers there. And this time of year when they're potentially on beds, I don't think they like that. I don't think they like a bait that's up in the water column above their heads potentially. So I think it is something just a little added. But I don't use scent. But what I do is I'll add some orange or chartreuse because they don't like bluegills this time of year.
No, that's a bluegill. We got perch too. That will get up in there too as well. You say no scent. Is that just for the green ones? Because I'd be interested to hear your opinion about scent for smallmouth.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Sometimes the scent does help. Like you take a max scent bait to the Great Lakes area, and you will seem to get more bites. I don't know if that's just in my head or not, but the max scent does seem to help. I've used other scents too, especially when I'm using a tube, just basically for a lubricant to put the jig head in the tube. But the thing about using the scent on the Potomac is the catfish for one.
Oh God!
And the thing about using scent up north or the drum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're still going to catch huge drum, but I try to stay away from the scent because it deters them a little bit more.
I don't think people don't talk about that a lot, about drum bycatch. I mean, everyone down here talks about the blue cat problem and how much of a nightmare it is on the Potomac. But yeah, are they a big problem up there, the drum?
Yeah, ever since the zebra mussel was introduced, they're shell crackers more or less. They'll eat the mussels, and their populations have gone through the roof, and they are monster. And they will push the smallmouth off a spot. It seems like, even though they're not really competing, they seem to run the smallmouth off. But I think I caught one that was almost 18 pounds last year.
Holy shit.
On the St. Lawrence, and it seems like the whole Great Lakes system is becoming polluted with them.
That's interesting. I didn't even know about that little secret that's going on up there. Fascinating.
I mean, they're fun, man. They're fun, but
I bet
not during a tournament. Not when you're trying to catch 5-pound smallmouth and you're catching 10-pound drum.
Brandon's got another great question. Brandon, I'll give you a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. I'll give away one more gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. You can message me at fishingthedmv@gmail.com to get your gift card. What is the hardest fishery you have navigated? You've been all over the world now. Which one really makes you pucker?
Well, any tidal body of water is not the easiest, let's say. But Rayburn last year, with the water being low, was interesting because they got all the black forest and all these submerged forest that you can't see. You just have to know where the boat lanes are.
Oh shit.
And it's interesting, to say the least. You'll be over 40, 50 feet of water and you'll be surrounded by trees.
That's crazy.
So that's a difficult fishery to navigate. The St. Lawrence itself, when we make that run from Messina to Clayton or down by the lake even, it can be treacherous too, for different reasons. One, you got all these shallow shoals, so if you're not paying attention to your map, you could run over a shoal. Most of them are marked, but some of them aren't. And they got these big tankers up there that really push the water, and you can't see that wake, so it makes it dangerous.
But you haven't talked about Erie proper. Interesting, your home water. So that's relatively easy to navigate, I guess.
Erie's easy to navigate if it's calm. The waves on Erie can get a little crazy sometimes, and Erie's got a mind of its own, or the entire Great Lakes system probably. You'll be out on flat, calm days, and I was out this is a while ago, 10, 15 years ago. I was out in New York side of Lake Erie, flat, calm, like flat as glass. I'm in a 17-foot boat with a 75 horsepower, and it kicks up, and we got 6 and 7 footers, and I'm struggling to get back. And it kicked up like right now. And I had like a 10-mile run to get back, and I did. I made it. It's you learn how to drive a boat in those situations. But as far as waves go, the Potomac's, it's no slouch either. You get a wind against the tide, and you get some good rollers going.
The washing machine effect on tide can be very daunting compared to the waves that you guys probably experience. I guess that would be the two scariest thing with just water, would be either the washing machine or the big waves. And then the third thing would be, the stump fields of places like again, Texas or Santa Cooper. Which has got to be thrilling. Is that how did you, if I can ask, how did you lose your lower units?
Well, I hit stuff. I don't know what happened the second time. I went through 2 last year, and the first time is I hit something, and the only answer was to replace the housing. So we replaced the housing. Then at Kentucky Lake last year, I was moving from one spot to the next, and I put it up on pad, and just as it was ready to break over on plane, it let go. It was a loud bang. And I knew exactly what happened. I trimmed the motor up. There was a big hole in the side of the gear case. I snapped one of the pinion gears, I think, and it just totally blew it out. So I was done for that tournament.
Dude, that is, no thank you. All right, guys. Got a couple more questions here, then I'm going to be shutting down the chat. Let's go with Derek Smith. Derek says, which is your favorite fishery? The most fun you've had fishing?
St. Lawrence. 110% the St. Lawrence. It's a different style fishing, but you can't help but catch fish, and a lot of them.
Could the largemouth in theory ever play a better role in tournaments?
I never want to say never. It's an incredible, in fact, the largemouth get overlooked on the Great Lakes and Champlain all the time. It's incredible largemouth fishing, but you would have to find them. It would have to be that time of year when they're all grouped up and somebody just found the mother lode someplace.
Yeah, I think Brock, guys, helped me in chat. I think Brock Mosley got a top 10.
Yeah, he got second place. Okay. Yeah, it was a couple years ago, throwing a chatterbait around down in the Clayton area. I mean, he maximized his time. It was actually a really good game plan. But as far as the MLF tournaments going out of Messina, you won't have. I don't feel you'll have the time to catch the right 5 largemouth.
That's a good point. Yeah, where you go out of is so important to do that. Yeah. Huh. Let's see. And then, Derek, you just want a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. You can email me, fishingthedmv@gmail.com, to get your gift card. We got Harold Smith here. And we'll make this the last question of the night here. What conditions demand reaction baits versus what conditions demand bottom contact baits? Good question.
That is very so let's use Saturday, for example. I just had a gut feeling based off of, my experience that with the high pressure coming in, that cold front just, got here, the water temperature dropped 5 degrees from practice. I just felt like they wanted something slower. And I could also tell in practice, the fish that I did catch on reaction baits, they weren't eating it. They were barely hooked, or I would lose them next to the boat, or when I got them in the boat, the hook would come out pretty easily. So I already had an indication there. But on Saturday morning, I just jumped right to the spinning rod and just started dead sticking that drop shot around. And that's, to me, that's when, in the same situation though, I've burned crankbaits before and got it to work. But for whatever reason, I just picked up that spinning rod and soaked it.
Yeah, and then Harold, I can add to that a little bit more. If you want really generic high ballpark stuff, bluebird skies, when that pressure really changes like that, that's going to be more of just your dragging and diddling kind of weather versus if it's raining or overcast, things like that. That's where you can start burning it if you really want a high level approach. But then it also depends on what kind of fish are you fishing for. If you're on the Susquehanna with smallmouth, you could pretty much throw a chatterbait 24/7. Yeah. Fine. So yeah, I mean, there's so many factors there that go into it. I guess my last question for you is, being a smallmouth guy, and I have so many smallmouth anglers on my show, are you team tube or team Ned rig if you had to pick one for the rest of your life?
I don't really want to talk about this, to be honest with you.
Because it's like Redskins versus the Cowboys. Nobody likes both. Someone likes one versus the other.
I do like them both.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about the tube because that tube is so overlooked ever since the Ned rig came out. And it still catches them, man. I mean, that's when I started in my club in 2006. I had guys show me the stupid tube and the tube jig and Texas rigging a tube, and tube was still a good bait. And then the beaver came along and it kind of pushed it out. And now I still love flipping a tube. In fact, I was flipping a tube in practice until I ran out of them.
It's so crazy that the tube is it does. Cause again, I live right on the upper Potomac, smallmouth territory, Shenandoah River, Susquehanna. I have so many river rat friends with jet boats, and they'll talk about like, this is my tube. It's purple with like a smidge of like gold flake, or just everyone's got their crazy tube color that they like. But outside of like the smallmouth cult tribes, it doesn't exist. It's so fascinating how it's gone so long, which that's great for the people that like it. You'll keep winning money, but most people just won't throw them.
To go back to the previous question about the reaction bite, is I could actually get a reaction bite on a tube, just like I was telling you with the beaver, how the weight, when you pop it and the weight splits and the bait does that, a tube does that better than any bait. And you can make a fish react with that tube better than probably any other soft plastic.
Because Jason Christie won, I think, at St. Clair snapping a tube.
Yep, he was one. Yep.
Okay, it was Christie, yeah. Yep. That's such an old school. My God. Well, it reminds me of like swimming a grub. which you don't do anymore because you have Kitex and you got swim baits and stuff. Like I haven't seen
the grub still catches them.
It still freaking catches them. You can't mimic that undulation that a tube has in the water.
You can't. Yeah,
So,
I mean, the way the baits are designed, they're designed to plane and glide, like the beaver styles. That tube, it's not designed. It's a cylinder basically. So who knows what direction it's going to go, and that elicits the reaction strike most of the time.
how light do you go up at the Great Lakes with the zebra mussels? Do you try to keep it at 10, 15 pound leader material, or do you go super light?
No. So there are tricks. That's a whole different episode. But there are tricks. I don't want people to think, this is another dirty little secret, is everybody thinks when we watch, let's take the Elite Series, for example, everybody's using a spinning rod. I can't tell you I use a spinning rod, but I prefer a baitcaster. Like I will throw a Carolina rig. That Carolina rig will catch them up there. I'll throw a tube on 15-pound test. But there are different, like boat control is big with the zebra mussels too. If you can control your drift, you want to keep that line as vertical as you can.
Gotcha.
And that'll help keep it out of the zebra mussels. And
I'm glad
constantly retying.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like for different niches, it's basically whatever Bassmaster Live says, you assume that's what the only thing that happens. And that's fascinating, because I was guilty of that. I was under the impression that zebra mussels are basically everywhere and everyone's just using, 4-pound test and they're drop shotting. And it's interesting that kind of clouds our judgment of things. And I hope that that's kind of like the thing with forward facing sonar. Of course, it plays an effect and all that. This is a whole other conversation, but it kind of weaves in where pop culture says one thing, but boots on the ground say another. I have so many tournament winners on that don't use scope, and they can still take everybody's money. Yeah. And maybe it's just because it's certain times of year in certain places where, of course, it plays.
Yeah. I mean, scope can play stronger in certain times of year or conditions, but guys are still winning just by fishing traditional methods. So, yeah, I don't know.
Josh, I really appreciate you taking the time out to come out here and be on the show. You have this win. It's got to do great stuff for your confidence. What's next for you?
Man, I want to keep fishing, and unfortunately I don't have another tournament on the books yet until the next Toyota Series at the end of June. I really wanted to pursue the AOY in the BFLs now. But I'm also signed up for the Invitational in the St. Lawrence, and the BFL is 2 weeks before that. So with the 30 days off limits, I can't fish the next BFL. And I called MLF today to see, they've changed the dates around before to allow guys to fish BFLs, but they said they can't because it's only a 2-week difference. I totally get it. But now I have to make a decision on what I want to do. So that's what's next. My next goal is I got a kid that's graduating high school. Well, this will be his senior year coming up. And so I'm going to kind of take it easy this year. I'm going to continue fishing all the BFLs I can. I fish one more and I qualify for the regional. I'm going to fish the Toyota Series, and we're going to see what happens next year. I really would like to get back to the Invitationals level at some point when I'm ready. And I will be ready at some point. It's just a matter of time. So
you just got to keep chopping wood. Keep chopping wood. You got the experience, and you'll be rewarded, like with this massive win, guys. Here he is, your first BFL in the Potomac River for the Northeast Division Series. Dude, congratulations. 18 pounds, 4 ounces does it. Guys, please, a link in the episode description, everything that we talked about. As always, I'm going to be taking this thing down in about 30 minutes just to make sure there's no issues with it, because the YouTube gods sometimes get squirrely with live streams, and it'll be re-uploaded tomorrow morning to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those great places. And I'll put a link to everything Josh would like me to put in the episode description, so go check him out and support him. Instagram, Facebook. And are there any sponsors or anybody we can give a shout out to?
I am partnered with a few brands. Cortland is one, and I try to stay away from that, to be honest with you. I know a lot of guys try to pursue sponsors, and it's not that I haven't, but I need to be real particular in what I pursue, because I don't want to promote something that I can't. I'm not a salesman, so I have to believe in it to sell it. And X Zone is one of those products. Cortland Line, Fish USA, those companies have all helped me, and they're supporting me. And I would appreciate it if people would reach out and at least look at their products. They make some really good products.
Guys, there you have it. Go check out all those great sponsors that help support Josh, and we'll definitely be seeing him in the winner's circle here soon. We'll see you guys next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.